In this video, we'll be taking a look at the Clone Captain for the Black Series 6-inch line. This was in the blue and black packaging with the TIE Fighter logo in the background back in 2014. So I actually got this action figure for a very lucky deal in 2016, November 2016. And I was at a toy show, and I happened to come across a table, and it was sitting there. And I asked the guy how much he wanted for it, and he only said $10, brand new. And as soon as he said that, I thought, okay, I gotta have this. So I got this action figure for $10, which was really good. And this was still during a time where a lot of those initial Black Series action figures, whether it was the black and orange packaging or the blue and black, were still not the most accessible, except for the usual peg warmers. This Clone Captain I never saw at regular retail ever, and most of the clone officers leading up to this point, I think we had the Sergeant, the Commander was around the corner, and then of course we had the plain white clone. They were all pretty hard to get a hold of because of course people army build them, and Hasbro was still kind of unsure as to how to handle the Black Series, so I don't think they did large quantities of these. But it's a very nice action figure. Of course, this is utilizing the very first clone sculpt we ever got. It's just a straight repaint of the original clone from in the all-white armor from, what was it, 2013 or maybe early 14. I forget exactly which number the original clone was. And this is the only clone I actually have in this sculpt. I never got any of the other ones. I have seen the Sergeant before in person, but I've never actually... I have seen the Commander, the pack he comes in person before as well. And then I never got the Lieutenant that came out several years later that Hasbro thankfully included with the original sculpt so everything can match. But anyways, let's just go ahead and take a closer look at this guy. So from my understanding, this clone is cast in a much more shiny white armor compared to like the Sergeant and the plain white clone. Not exactly sure about the Commander. I imagine it's pretty similar. I distinctively recall the Lieutenant having a little bit brighter armor as well. And if you recall, for the longest time, there was a kind of a mini campaign off to the side of where's the clone Lieutenant. It took Hasbro, what was it, 5 years or 6 years for them to finally release the Lieutenant. But thankfully, we do have a complete set. Unfortunately for TBC, we never got a complete set for the skinny mold. We're actually still missing the Captain and the Commander, which I will be doing the Saga Legends Clone Captain here next. So I haven't, of course, as I mentioned, this is the only clone I have in this particular sculpt, so I haven't really talked about it before. For a first attempt, I think it's alright. It's definitely far from perfect. The biggest thing about it that definitely needed some major improvement was in the elbows here. Even though they have the double joint here, they still only go about 90 degrees, and as you can tell, I can't really get him to hold his rifle too well in this particular type of pose. Helmet sculpt's pretty good. There is no head underneath. They did a nice job with the paint apps. The visor looks very crisp. The red's very nice. And I think they pretty much painted everything accurately. The fin is totally red. It's just a nice bright white clone, no weathering or anything of that sorts on it. He does have the 4 dots on his chest there. And of course the red striping along his arms, which I think that's pretty much accurate for both sides. He does have the communicator sculpted on his arm there. As for the rest of him, it's pretty basic. Of course, the clone belt, then the clone armor for the legs. I think Hasbro did improve the plastic with the Captain for this clone skull, because I know the plain white one and maybe even the Sergeant had a very soft plastic where a lot of people were having problems with the legs bowing out, and it felt very brittle and very soft, or it wasn't very stable. I mean, but this one feels a little bit better. It does have the thermal detonator back here, and then the pattern in the back of his armor. In terms of his articulation, he does have a ball joint at the head. It has a much better up and down motion than it does have side to side. You can't actually move his head side to side at all, other than looking left and right. As far as rotating it like that, not possible. He does have hinge at the shoulders, and thankfully the shoulder armor does go over his torso there, allow for more range of motion. As I mentioned, double hinge at the elbow, but unfortunately it only goes 90 degrees, and it's heavily restricted. Also, he does have the swivel bicep. Hinge wrists, this one goes in and out, this one goes up and down. Joint the torso, hinge tips, swivel thigh, double hinge at the knee with the pins, and then he does have the rocker ankles. So pretty good articulation for this guy. And he fits pretty good on a stand. Definitely one of my better fits for all my Black Series figures. So for his weapons and accessories, he comes with exactly what you would expect. He does have the longer DC-15 rifle, and his rifles are distinguishable from many other releases, even though we've seen these two DC-15 rifles time and again. They did add a little bit of extra paint detailing on them, as you can see, to distinguish the Captain from the rest. So it's all cast in black except for gray. I assume that's meant to be like the handle. I don't think that's the magazine at all. It does look like it has a little bit of weathering, or that could be just black paint from his hands wearing off on it. I'm not too sure. Yeah, the magazine's supposed to be right there, but they didn't really sculpt it on. Interesting. And of course, a smaller one here with a gray magazine. But he does fit them well, or they both fit well in his hand. Sometimes I have them displayed with both. Very nice. Of course, he doesn't have the trigger finger on his right hand, but you can still get him to hold at least one of the rifles. But that's pretty much all I can tell you about the Clone Captain here. As I mentioned a few times already, I don't have any of the other sculpts to do a comparison to, but I will bring out the 3 3/4 inch Clone Captain we have. And this is still the best one we have to date. In the old antenna mold, basically. No, this isn't exactly the antenna mold, but it's inspired by that. But they look pretty good together. I have them usually displayed pretty close together on the shelf. They look really nice. So would I recommend this Clone Captain for your collection? I would. Even compared to the standards we have today, we've gone through what, maybe 3 or 4 phases of different clone sculpts. This is still a pretty good one, so if you manage to find it out in the wild somewhere, at a comic book store or a toy show or anything of that nature, and you can find them for about retail value or even less like I did, I would highly recommend them. Happy he's a part of my collection. We'll mention one thing is, yeah, I think he's missing some paint on his helmet there. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. But yeah, I'm happy he's a part of my collection. Has a great story behind him. And this was actually the very first Black Series clone I got in my collection, I think. I'd have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure he was either the first or one of the first ones. And happy he's been with me for the last 8 years now. But anyways, that concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews in the future. There'll always be more to come. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate all your support, and check out some links in the description if you haven't done so already. And as always, thanks for watching.